As you know, once Israel surrendered one of its really most beautiful agricultural communities in Gush Katif in Gaza, 22 communities, 10,000 Jews. After that was surrendered in August of 2005, it became a ghost town. It was supposed to be an agricultural community for the Arabs, but instead they plundered and basically turned it back into the desert that it was before the Israelis got there. So right after that, in 2006, there was an election held in Gaza, and Hamas won the election. And that didn't stop Mahmoud Abbas from continuing, but eventually he was thrown out, violently by Hamas in Gaza. So it became Hamas town, or Hamas Tan, as some like to call it. But that's the history. And as much as Israel has tried to make peace, it has been an absolute failure. Not because Israel didn't try. It's because the Arabs don't want peace. They really want to destroy Israel. They want to exterminate the Jews. And if the world doesn't see that yet, then I don't think the world will ever see it. But the Jews know it. And we've been through this many, many times in our thousands of years of history on Earth. So we're used to this. But Israel tried, and Israel continues to try. The president is not making the situation any better. He's making the situation worse by giving the Arabs a false hope and expectation. He's essentially empowering them, emboldening them, and making them more recalcitrant and stubborn to do anything that would even come close to a so-called peace process. But the president, because he thinks he can will everything and it's going to happen, pursues further Gush Katifs, further expulsions, and as a result, the Israeli public is not going to stomach it. Is not really prepared to accept it either, because they've been through it and they know better. So they have to tell the president to listen to Mike Huckabee, listen to a man who knows a few things about the Middle East, and a little more than his defense secretary, that is the defense secretary of the United States, Chuck Hagel, or his secretary of state, John Kerry, who basically probably don't share Mike Huckabee's views, but wrongfully and misguidingly don't share his views, because Mike actually has the views that work, that have been tried and true and have been successful, and would probably make peace. If there is an entity of peace or any semblance of peace in the Middle East, you're not going to have it happen by giving everything to the Arabs on a silver platter. That's not how it happens. Perhaps if you are realistic, don't give them false hope, don't give them false expectations, you might actually see peace as the original Isaac and Yishmael made peace at the end of their lives. We know Yishmael came around. He after fighting Isaac all his life, decided that maybe it's time to forget about fighting him anymore, like Anwar Sadat did, by the way, when he came to the Knesset. Something, by the way, the president has forgotten about, because the president is not going to the Knesset. He's already shown his disrespect for the Knesset and moved his message to the Binyanei Ha'umah a mile away. So he's already dissed the entire leadership of Israel without even blinking, without even setting foot on the land of Israel. He's already dissed us. So you can imagine what's going to happen when he gets there. And Mike has the only realistic view of what's going on. And if you don't listen to it, you're missing the boat. And the president is missing the boat. So if he thinks he's going to get a warm reception in Israel, he's mistaken.
Do you believe that religious people have a better understanding of the nature of the global jihad than secular people do?
Of course. Secular people for the most part, have no education about Arab-Israeli relationships for thousands of years. We know the Bible. We know how to deal with the Arabs. We know how to deal with our brethren. By the way, I treat many patients who are Arabs. It doesn't mean, I have a great deal of respect for the Arabs, but I can't tell you that you should give them everything on a silver platter and expect to have peace. That's not going to happen. You have to deal with them in a realistic way. If you don't deal with them in a realistic way, you're never going to get peace. And as I said, there was a peace at the end of the lives of Ishmael and Isaac. So it's conceivable that peace could happen, but it has to happen in a realistic sense. And you're not going to get it by producing Gush Katif over and over and over again. That's going to lead to a disaster, as Gush Katif did. And this disaster is still playing out. It's not over yet. And it's a trauma that actually, if you look at the history of the Jews, and if you know the history, this has never really happened in our history where the Jews expelled Jews from their own territory. It's really, I've looked very carefully at a lot of history, and it's never happened. Yes, there have been civil wars, and there have been other instances of situations that are bad, but never has one group of Jews expelled another from one area of Israel. That's just not happened.
Yeah.
Okay? I mean, not in the fashion that happened with Gush Katif. I mean, we can go through the history of Judea and Samaria from the time of, let's say, Othniel ben Kenaz, the first judge of Israel. And we can go back then, and we can start looking at all these histories. The Jews never did this to each other. So it's on a lot of levels. It's a trauma that won't go away.
As an Orthodox Jew, how do you feel other Jews should look at the support coming from the evangelical Christian community for Israel?
Well, as I've said to Mike Huckabee when I've taken him to Israel a number of times, the reason Israel exists today is because of one fundamentalist Christian whose name was Winston Churchill. And very few people know that Winston Churchill was a fundamentalist Christian, as Mike Huckabee is, and as are many of the evangelicals. The fundamentalism, the fact that the Bible promises Isaac and his offspring the land of Israel, that fundamentalism is what drove Winston Churchill to create the state of Israel as we know it. Not as we know it. Actually, the state of Israel, the borders were more Abrahamic, as Mike Huckabee alluded to today. They were much broader than even the lines that were drawn in 48, for sure. Even I'm talking about the partition plan. But if you go back to 1922, land of Israel extended far, almost to Iraq. According to the Balfour Declaration, we went almost to the Euphrates, which is what the Abrahamic promise was. Most people have no clue about that. But Mike alluded to it tonight. And we certainly had Jordan. So if anyone wants to say, well, you need another state in the Middle East, well, Jordan was that state. Jordan really belongs to Israel too, because it was part of Transjordan, part of the whole Winston Churchill makeup of the land of Israel, which, by the way, is still on the books. It's still a part of it's never been, even though it's been superseded, it's never been completely written off. The Winston Churchill plan of 1922 has never lost its validity. Right. Yes, there have been other plans that have superseded it, but it has never lost its validity. And God willing, there will be a day when we come back to Churchill's original plan, which, by the way, is the Abrahamic plan, and which is rightfully the land of Israel. So any talk of, some other state somewhere in Judea and Samaria is absurd. It's a total absurdity. It has nothing to do with the basis of international law, Abrahamic law, biblical law. So fundamentalist Christians are a very important entity to help produce our Messianic era, basically. If you really want to push it that far, I mean, yeah, they will be the one. Just as Winston Churchill was, very few people know, was the one who got us to the point of having a state of Israel. So you push it a little further, we're in that Messianic era. It's not that far away.